NSW. People who work in the pee industry. Editors. Cameramen women. Office assistants etc. What everyday work challenges, peculiar to your industry, do you face? I write pee for a living. I get an unusual amount of letters from people in prison, and most of my fan correspondence, not just from prison, is just thinly veiled attempts at obscene messaging. A friend of mine used to write adult films as his side hustle. Math was the hardest part. What would happen was that the studio would come up with a title. They'd have a number of sets available, a given number of male actors and a given number of female actors. The writer was given all this information and had to come up with a storyline that used all the sets, and also included all the different combinations of men and women. Because you can't have the same two people get together twice in the same film. People tend to fast forward through a coupling that they've already watched, so it all came down to complicated combinatorics to get it all to work together. Some time ago, while visiting American cousins, I was invited to their neighbor's birthday barbecue. The birthday boy had started out as a documentary filmmaker, but for the last few years he had made the vast majority of his considerable income directing shooting high production value pee. I work at the studio floor level in the feature film business, so we had lots to talk about. When the backyard, over the top of long neck's conversation rolled around to his genre of filmmaking, as it inevitably had to, I asked him if watching pee still turned him on, considering his occupation. His answer was a definite frick number. Why not? He said it was because of the smell. Apparently, making pee in close quarters smells like you guess it might smell, of sweat and spit and butt and P&T secretions and God knows what else, all over a cloying background stink of fruit flavored lube. He compared it to being locked inside a construction site's unserviced porta potty, alongside a big bowl of strawberry puree. He said he can't watch pee because it brings back the smell, which kills his passion. What's more, his aversion to consuming pee himself ironically creates a domestic issue, because his wife likes to watch pee, especially the pee he makes. Baby, let's watch that Batman parody you made. God dang it, Martha. I do not currently work in the industry, nor can I say that I was actually involved in it to a strong degree, but I used to do audio work for someone who did. I frequently had to replace fire engine or police sirens or other extraneous sounds in the audio with appropriate sounding moans or frick noises when the location recording picked up stuff from outside the building. You would be surprised at how many times a moan can be copy-pasted and sound legitimate. I remember the looped audio from Girls Gone Wild. Every couple of minutes, same voice. She's 18, I think. Used to manage a pee ship with a video arcade in the back. Our main clientele was 35-60-year-old gay men, nearly all closeted with families that I'd see on the weekends at the local mall. The instant they saw me, they'd rush their families out of whatever store I walked into. The said buttholes would literally drag their wives out like they were trying to kidnap them, their children too. Then, these classless fricks would come in and ask, screaming at me, to not tell their families. Like, guy, you pay my salary every week alone watching minute-long clips and sucking Dave's dong. You make sure I have a roof over my head. Why the frick would I out you? Used to work law enforcement. Quit the police force because I didn't like the way things were being handled at a higher level, and I now work as a contractor for pee sites. I filter through the uploaded videos to ensure there's no CP, hidden videos, pictures and videos, surprise gore, etc. Delete gore and other random videos, like the Super Bowl halftime show. CP gets forwarded to the proper authorities, alongside any info we have on the uploader's account. I hate it at times, but at least some good comes of it. Pays better and the job is safer. I'm hoping to make a career of it because honestly, pee isn't going anywhere. Also, my predecessor, a person who had a monopoly on the filtering pee videos industry, turned out to be a pedophile. He was arrested and his team disbanded, which is why a law enforcement background was helpful in starting me on this path. It's just safer for everyone. I was invited to a fetish pee shoot at this bar in San Francisco a few years back, where this young woman was strapped naked to a wooden cross and waterboarded with beer and had her titties slapped around. After the shoot, I talked to her for a while and she said the toughest part of the job is getting people to realize she wants to be there and is not there against her own free will, even though the shoot portrays a completely different story. I've met a dude in Japan whose job consisted in pixelating the genitals. It was a pretty good gig according to him. Nothing to complain about. Now that's what I call a dong blocker. I have a cousin who used to work in post-production editing. She only quit because the hours were long and it was taking a toll on her health. She's still friends with a lot of them to this day. Some tidbits she told me. Most of them do it to fund college. The freakier the scene, the more they get paid. Girl on girl scenes pay the least. There's a ton of money in the cam industry. I very briefly worked part-time as a personal assistant to a guy who, among other ventures, co-runs a fairly popular studio. In my experience, while you might sort of work the periphery of the client's financial dealings, managing appointments, fielding business-related calls, it's not really expected or usual that your duties would include taking an active role in their business. But within a week of being hired, he made it clear there would be a considerable bonus in it for me if I was willing to appear in some of his videos. Thanks, but no thanks. I guess I had it easy. I did editing and visual effects. My main problems were people giving me a ton of footage, not using a slate, having the actors ad-lib so much I couldn't always figure out what went where. Oh, and missing clean plates, missing background shots and such. Basically my issues were it was rapidly shot stuff by people who weren't professions and would forget steps that are important later. Michael Vegas here. Trying to build enough connection with a new frick partner to make everything flow well during the shoot. Racism. I don't face it directly as a white guy, but it is rampant in this business. Makeup sponges replace tampons when shooting. So dong abrasions from fricking a latex brick. Fluffers are not real and there is a lot of stop-start during shoots. Squirting is mostly pee and some people do not hydrate well. Trying to keep a straight face when unexpected smelly pee hits you is terrible. Trying to make sure my agent is not going behind my back and ripping me off by charging a production fee and collecting money I never see. Currently happening. Huge amounts of homophobia from the old guard and P. Company owners and directors mostly. There is no union. I frequently am stuck on set for a long time with no increase in pay for my time that was wasted. FSC lying about STI testing practices. Having a cameraman super close to me is not a problem. Having a camera guy on set talking about how he wishes he was fricking and making the female scene partner uncomfortable is unprofessional and annoying. Frequent lack of food or terrible no craft service. This is just a start. This is a job first and foremost. Even with all that going on, it is still my favorite job I have ever had. I just wish a union would be formed to help combat the same crap that happens in the mainstream entertainment industry. Not necessarily P industry, but I worked for a publishing company that did adult books. We were working on a book of 101 freaking positions. The publisher wanted 101. The salespeople said that worked best, and we booked the models for 101 photos. Dear God, we were reaching by the end. There are not that many ways to position the human body and have the genitals line up to anything worthwhile. I'm confused. I know, like 4 maybe 5 ways of making things line up. The others must be impractical, or require a combination of skinniness and flexibility found only in yoga gurus. Maybe you should listen to Butterfly Effect. It's a bit more broad but still in the same topic. One thing that surprised me was that male P actors will use P to keep their dongs erect during takes. I used to work for Team Skeet in the office, editing photos, updating the websites, tube sites, etc. My everyday challenge was to write the corniest story description I could think of. Being a cameraman in the P industry is insane and it takes an insane person to do it. I'm from Miami and had a friend in college who did a few videos. I hung out with him and the camera guy one night. They did a shoot earlier that day. The people holding the camera usually have money in the production. Sometimes they even own the channel company. They're the director plus cinematographer. This guy who I met was the kind of guy who made you nervous to be around. I always felt like he was on the verge of committing a violent crime, but was also trying to have fun constantly. We were all doing drugs and drinking and he of course did the most. They talked about the shoot the whole time and the camera guy was viciously insulting the girl they worked with. He even talked about other girls and was super mean. I sat back and watched and listened. My friend said the whole act of shooting P is fine and he felt he was great at it, but the camera guy just gets too close. He has two, I know, but I think it's why my friend didn't continue doing videos. The dude just weirded him out. If the cameraman doesn't say obnoxious mean crap the whole time, are they even shooting a porno? I've heard pee sets often have a pretty overwhelming odor. Well, this turned into a real olfactory adventure, didn't it? I'm so sorry. Smells like sweat, baby wipes and skeet with undertones of aged strawberry lube and notes of cotton candy body spray. Lots of girls join the industry to support a drug habit, so dealing with that can be a hassle, especially when everyone around you enables it. Not naming any names, but an A-list porn star offered me years ago. You used to see it all the time, but thankfully it's not as common anymore, but it does still happen. I think with how big and accessible the industry has gotten, a lot of smart girls are using pee to make some decent money independently. Just avoid toxic people and it can be a lucrative career. There's 2 documentaries called After PNs and After PNs 2 that include interviews from many different former adult film stars. Some made enough money and lived responsibly enough to retire comfortably. Others, like Chasey Lane, aren't doing so well. Sort of a fascinating look at the ups and downs of the industry. Well, I mean, wasn't there a video where the camera guy got hit with actor's sperm right on his face? This blew up, hopefully not in the face. I'm imagining one giant sperm with a boxing glove punching the cameraman in the face. In 1997, my dad worked at a video store where you rent movies for an hour in little cubicles alone doing God knows what. His job was to clean the cubicles. He was also in the Navy during this time. He saw semen in both jobs. So, I don't know how much has changed in recent years, but I've had friends who have done QA for P websites, and these sites have user-submitted content. What I heard, back in the day, is some of these QA people would be tasked with monitoring and flagging illegal user-submitted content. I cannot fathom sitting at a computer for 8 hours monitoring P submitted by people and having to see snuff films, bestiality, and child P. Like, it's great to know that someone is there flagging these submissions and IPs, and that it sometimes leads to arrests, but it must have a toll mentally on the monitoring QA person. I imagine for a lot of people, they cannot analyze things without believing them to be true and applicable. There are plenty of people who can categorize without fully examining the implications, but once one of those situations catches their eye, it is permanently over for them. Everything afterwards gets evaluated first person and it takes its toll. I worked for a small, local prawn company for about 3 years. I handled a lot of the paperwork, the 2,257 info, writing paychecks, booking hotel rooms, etc. I would also hold a camera during the live shoot, help the models, go to the store if we forgot something, crap like that. There were only about 4 or 5 of us working at a time, 2 holding handheld cameras, 1 being the director, the others checking the lights, the static cameras, and monitors. A couple of things. The smell. The set always smells like a weird blend of latex and lube, mixed with the food from the craft services table. The more people you're filming, the harder it is to keep to a timeline. It's oftentimes like trying to herd cats to get everyone on set at the same time. Of course, as soon as they eventually arrive, something will happen to the cameras, or the lights. There is a lot of hurry up and wait. Filming prawn is really quite remarkably unerotic. I actually almost fell asleep once while filming. Now mind you, the models we were filming were extraordinarily boring for some reason, and I started nodding off. I've found there are 2 types of models. Women that are extremely smart, using the industry to further their career aspirations, even meeting women going for their PhDs. The others, let's just say I've handled rocks that had more brains. There doesn't seem to be a lot of in between. Also, very, very rarely does someone see M on screen without help. There is normally a cut, with the guy jerking himself pretty hard, then it cuts back to the money shot. Only very rarely was a man able to achieve orgasm without jerking off first. As far as the story of the guy getting a mouthful on accident, I had no doubt that was a setup. You never film that close, as most cameras can zoom pretty dang good without putting yourself in the splash zone. It's the part about the craft services table smell mixing with the other smells that got me. Lunch meat, lube, beauty equals smell nightmares. Not entirely P industry, but I'm in the furry community here. I draw NSW stuff for money. Furries will pay a ton of money to have their persona drawn with extreme proportions, multiple limbs, etc. I've been an artist for as long as I can remember. I draw many things outside of the furry fandom. I enjoy drawing all sorts of things, not just NSW furry stuff. What's most frustrating is that this isn't what I want to be known for. I want folks to look at my art and say, it's beautiful, not WTF did you draw Pikachu with blimp-sized boobs and 4 dongs as big as school buses? It's strange because I've never had anyone interested in the art I make outside NSW stuff. Nobody would pay a single penny for the things I've done that aren't NSW or furry related. But the moment I draw a gender bender version of Bowser, the cash comes flying in. It's sort of a not very good feeling. Like, I'm glad I'm getting money, a good deal of it too, but I'm just not happy with what needs to be done to get it. Does this make any sense? It's tough to describe. I talked to a lighting guy in Los Angeles who said that he also worked on pea shoots. I asked him, so, when a person delivers pizza all day, everything smells like pizza, their car smells like pizza, their clothes smell like pizza. He cut me off and said, yes, you go home every night to your wife and kids smelling like frick, like other people's CM. Shudders. I remember this quote from a Louis Theroux documentary about the pea industry. There are less pea actors at this time than there are male astronauts in the world. Some pea director worked for a credit card company's dispute department and ended up disputing a purchase for an adult doll on behalf of the client. Got to talking. Apparently it's common to try and return an adult doll, whether it be custom designed or a normal model. People still try, and even after they had fricked with it they try. Luckily this guy said he never opened it, so I hope that's the case. I stayed at a very well-known director and P-star's house in LA a few times while I was out there shooting. She let me sleep on her leather couch, but told me to wipe it down first. I then realized she uses that couch for filming and literally dozens and dozens of P-stars had fricked on it. When I watch movies she made I recognize the couch and wish I had splurged on an Airbnb. When you have your period but still need to work, you shove a makeup sponge or two up there. Very difficult to get out. You use a combination of clawing at the sponge with your fingers and using your T muscles to give birth to the nasty little thing. Make sure you're thorough with your enema, otherwise your shit shoot scene will turn into a poopy disaster. And no one will bat an eye because it happens all the time. Someone will pass you the baby wipes, you clean yourself, he'll clean his dong, and get back to it. Hope it's not on the floor rug bed couch when you realize you weren't thorough with your enema because you just did butt to mouth. Squirting is just pee, but hey man, it's your fetish. I won't argue with you. Getting CM in your eyes sucks. How much does a regular P-star male female make per scene in comparison to big names in the P industry? Actresses like Sasha Grey and Mia Khalifa managed to make millions of dollars before retiring, but I don't think that's the case of most actors/actresses. Or is it? My uncle was a bigger name actor back in the day. Almost 800 movies, AVN awards, Hall of Fame P actor. Now he's penniless and lives with my grandma. He was installing cable for a bit and is now learning how to code. Obligatory don't work in the industry, but I heard a podcast once where this dude said his buddy took him to a pea shoot. The shoot was all girl, like 5 of them, and there was an 18-year-old girl who was doing pee for the first time. The scene was the newbie basically getting crammed full of things by the other girls, which ended with a corn cob they call the whale dong or something. Supposedly it's beyond humanly possible size and they used that on her last. The guy said he went outside to smoke a cigarette afterwards and the girl was shaking and crying trying to smoke a cigarette but could barely steady herself to get it to her mouth. The director walked past and while still shaking and through tears she squeaked out, "Did I do alright?" Stuck with me and blew any illusion that pee is all good times for everyone involved. Really just made me sad. I haven't seen it mentioned, but for performers of either gender, booking is almost always the biggest hassle. If you're not in the top popularity slot, 15% for women and 5% for men, your time is often spent doing auditions. Legit auditions aren't nearly as steamy as the make-believe versions. Writing emails, attending events, texting their agents, texting booking people, posting on social media, generally schmoozing with other performers, even doing free gigs, and generally trying to ring enough bells to convince a producer to actually hire you. I suppose non-P actors have similar challenges, but when performers who aren't top tier get together, it's one of the most common conversations. It's become even more so, with the decline of revenue as a whole. More misconception than challenge, but I used to work at the Playboy offices back when they were converting all their VHS to DVD, yes, a while ago. Part of my job was to sit and watch the VHS tapes and take note of where chapter breaks should be etc. And then when they made the DVD sleeves, I would have to QC them for spelling mistakes and things like that. Honestly, it was like any other office job I've ever had, except that there was always peon in my cubicle, and it was hard to convince people that it wasn't some crazy frat house environment filled with debauchery. It did make for some odd conversations with my boss, and it was pretty hilarious that he could name what playmate was in a picture even if you covered up her face. But overall, standard workplace. So I'm in a weird position in that I both perform, mostly making solo clips, but I've worked with a few studios too, but I've also worked within the industry for research purposes. I'm getting my PhD on how legislation in the UK affects the industry, so I've been round studios interviewing people and observing sets. The most peculiar challenge for me is dealing with all the misconceptions. No other job that I have ever worked has ever had people question my mental health, my physical safety, my motivations or my morality. It's a job that I consider inherently political. Of course it's possible to work and put your hours in, go home and forget about it, but I can't do that. And/or frick work is often the canary in the coal mine as far as issues of censorship, regulation, online freedom and carnal freedom goes, and I consider it part of my job to do what I can to tackle policies which won't just damage the industry internally, but society more broadly. Also, working in retail was far more degrading for me than P ever has been. Coal mine. When I did my P movie it was shot across 2 days' time. We worked 18 hours both days and barely had time to rest between scenes. I was then called back to do voiceovers for the companies, now out of business, first movie, and the movie I was in never go developed to the final stages. I've worked in some light fetish videos. Dealing with the women involved is very tricky. It's not that they are bad people, just very damaged. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.